Oh, well, hello there. So I've recently been on this teeny tiny foods bender where I'm making small snack foods. Don't ask me why, I just am because every 40 something year old should be wearing them. It's all the rage with the middle age. Let me show you how to make them. It's so super easy. You're going to need a pack of polymer clay. I like to use Sculpey. And I'm going to start with tacos because they're my fave. So you're going to make a taco shell. And look, if you are thinking about working with clay, and you want to make something, all you have to do is think about what it is you want to make and break it down into one of three things. Do I want to make something that is a slab, a sphere, or a coil? For example, the taco shell is flattened. That's a slab. So I simply rolled a sphere, squished it flat, and then bent it into the shape of a shell. Next up would be the meat in the taco, which, if you think about it, would probably be spheres, but I didn't want those crumbly bits falling out of the taco. So I went with a coil. And so I know it looks like a brown hot dog, but don't nobody need to know except you and me and anybody else who's listening. So like two other people. Now I am going to start the cheese and then watch me rethink my life choices and switch gears and go to the lettuce. So what would lettuce be? A sphere, a slab, or a coil? A really, really skinny slab. I'm going to squish this clay so thin so that I can kind of ruffle it to give it that thin and light texture of lettuce. Next up, then, is the cheese. Now, this kind of clay, you can pop it right into the oven. I like to use a toaster oven so I don't end up heating up a giant oven. But if you use a toaster oven, definitely use it on a lighter setting because it tends to, I speak from experience, burn things a little bit. So instead of using the temperature of 275, dial it back to 250. I like to have tomato slices in my taco. Pretty sure that's not like how legit tacos roll, but that's how this one is because I wanted a little pop of red. I did struggle with the cheese a little bit because now we're getting teeny tiny and I don't have teeny tiny hands. So this part was a little tricky, but in the end, as long as you have stuff inside of your taco, it's going to look like a taco. So once your cheese is inside, then you can start to think about any last little bits that you might want to add. I really thought making the taco was pretty easy. In fact, I ended up making 2 of these taco charms. Before putting them in the oven, wherever I wanted the jump ring to go, the jump ring is the little round metal ring that you can get at the craft store, buy a pack of like 50. Those are what jewelers use to add to something like a charm to make it so you can put it around a necklace. So all I did was simply take that jump ring and slide it into the clay before baking it in the oven. Didn't do anything else. No glue was added. Once it came out of the oven, the jump ring was then stuck to the charm. So there you go. I also wanted all of my charms not to break and be too fragile. So I added a coat of Mod Podge to each one of my charms. So tacos, super easy. Since we're having a bit of a fiesta here, why not move on to nachos? I threw it out there to the Instagram universe. What other food charm should I make? And nachos keep getting mentioned. And I was really leery of making nachos because I thought it was going to look like a plate of, something else. So I decided to go for it, and I'm starting here with a little slab to look like the terracotta bowl that you might find your nachos resting and chilling out in before you devour them face first, as they should be eaten. I'm using the same color of Sculpey clay that I use for my taco shell, squishing it really, really flat, making a very thin slab, and I started by kind of cutting the triangle shapes, which proved to be a little tricky because when I would drag my skewer stick through the clay, it would kind of change the shape of the triangle. So ultimately what I ended up doing was just using my fingers to make lots and lots of little teeny tiny triangle shapes for what are they called? Tortilla chips. By the way, half of your tortilla chips are going to get covered by all the fixins, so you don't really have to worry like I'm fussing here to make them look perfect. It doesn't matter because you're just going to slap a bunch of toppings right on top. So as you can see, I'm moving very slowly to get each chip just perfect. Yo, girl, it don't even matter. Let's move on, shall we? Look at that. Attention to detail. Nope, nobody's going to... What do you... No. Please stop. And to think I even considered adding like little polka dots to show the texture on the tortilla chip. Chip? You know what I mean. Now let's add cheese. And I'm going to do cheese pretty much the same way that I did cheese for the tacos. Now I know the cheese is supposed to be melted. I guess it really depends on where you get your nachos. If you get them at the fairgrounds where they just dump a blob of Velveeta cheese all over it, you know you're living your life right. But I'm going for the more traditional shredded cheese, a little bit pre-melty, if you will. So here I am adding lots and lots of teeny tiny coils of cheese. And then I just added a little blob of green for some guacamole, maybe some little spheres of brown for the meat, and a little squiggle of sour cream on top. Delicious. Let's move on to my favorite food of all times, sushi. Personally, the sushi I'm about to make is way too healthy for what I like to eat. I like my sushi with cream cheese and deep fried with lots of sauce. That's not how it's probably supposed to be eaten, but it is delicious. So what I'm starting with is the ball of rice. So I'm using white and making a coil. And I'm going to kind of spread the coil out, flatten it as I go, and then I'm going to start adding the colors of all the food that I want inside of my sushi. So maybe a little bit of green for celery. How about orange for carrots, a little bit of pink for some salmon or tuna maybe. Once you've got that laid out, then you can start adding those little bits inside. And the more variety and the more color you add, the cooler your little piece of sushi is going to be. You could just take those little pieces and fold them in half. I'm not sure why I'm spending so much time breaking each one individually, because if you think about it, the folded part could be at the bottom where nobody would see it. Here I am just taking all the time in the world, adding all these little teeny tiny pieces of food. By the way, while I'm working on these, I am obsessively watching food shows. I'm currently obsessed with Zumbo's Just Desserts. I think I'm saying that right. It's a show out of Australia. It's on Netflix. It's amazing. And they make the most beautiful and epic desserts, which I will never be able to make. But by golly, I can sculpt them out of clay. Just don't eat them. So once you've got all of your little teeny tiny bits of food in the center of your piece of sushi, which I'm pretty sure is not how actual sushi is made. I've never made it before. Should really have found out. I guess that probably would have made making this a lot easier to find out how actual sushi is made. Anyway, once you have that sorted, then you can start to roll the sushi up. Once you've got it rolled up, it's going to have this weird little lump where the two white parts come together. Just kind of smooth them out with your finger. And then, of course, you cannot forget to wrap your sushi with the seaweed. So I'm going to get a piece of little black clay and really flatten that super duper thin so that it goes around nice and tightly and also doesn't look too chunky. You want it to be nice and thin, just like the seaweed going around actual sushi. Now, if you look on my finished one, you'll see that it actually kind of, sort of, according to me anyway, looks like rice. The white part looks like rice. So that was added a little bit after the fact with my skewer stick to give it a little bit of texture. All right, here goes the wrapping of the seaweed around the sushi, and not gonna lie, I actually think it looks pretty good. A legit teeny tiny piece of sushi. Then, once that's complete, here I am adding the texture for the rice. Now, sushi just wouldn't be complete without a teeny tiny little dollop of wasabi and, of course, ginger. So the wasabi is easy. You just add a little blob of light green. I'm going to make some sashimi. So for that, I'm just going to sculpt a small piece of rice. I'm not even going to add texture. It won't be seen. And blend a couple of pieces of clay together for the salmon. I think that's salmon. I don't know. I just eat it. I just put it in my mouth and talk about how amazing sushi is and how I want to have it every day of my life. I'm going with the fact that it's salmon. Anyway, I'm just kind of coiling these two different colors together to give it a nice blend that you have when you eat that fish. Those two colors swirl together that you see the meat and the fat. Once that's done, I'm just going to lay that right on top of my sushi. And of course, last but not least, I'm going to add tiny little dots for the ginger. Now, I considered adding chopsticks. I just couldn't seem to make it work with the proportion of my sushi, and I also thought it might end up getting broken. So I did leave that off, and I'm going to be honest, there's been a time or two when I may or may not have been so hungry for my sushi that I either just resorted to using a fork or worse, my hands. So there you have it, sushi. Now, last but not least, donuts. These are so easy to make. And if you're working on food charms and you're struggling with a couple of them, or maybe they're too complicated, I don't know why I didn't show you this one first. Start with a donut. Super easy. Begin with a coil of clay, and then once you've got that, you're going to bend it into a donut shape. It might lose its shape just a little bit, in which case you can use a stick, and I was able to use my stick to kind of open up the hole inside the donut a little bit better to help it keep its shape. Then you get the fun part of deciding what kind of donut do you want to make? What flavor do you want the icing to be? Do you want it to have sprinkles? I don't know why I decided to go with every donut has sprinkles. I don't know. I don't even know that I've ever had a donut with sprinkles, but it just seemed like the right thing to do. Once you've got your donut, why is this taking me so long? Am I seriously still working on this donut shape? Seriously, Stevens? Once you've got that finished, then you can add your icing and the rest of the bits. If you look at those donuts that are finished sitting there, you can see the jump ring sticking out of them. Like I said, the jump ring was added right before popping those in the oven. When they're out of the oven, you're going to have to add a second jump ring. The reason is if you just put one jump ring on your charm and then slide it on the necklace, they're all going to hang sideways and nobody will be able to see them from the front. If you add a second jump ring just by opening that little ring with some of your tools and sliding it into the first one, then it will hang frontways so people will be able to see it. The other thing I liked to use to kind of give my charm some space was I used wooden beads that I painted in a bunch of different colors. The wooden beads really helped me space out the charms a little bit so they weren't all bumping into one another or worse, leaving gaps in the necklace. So, donuts. If you don't know where to start, oh my gosh, then start with donuts. Super easy. So there you can see I've gotten all of my beads painted, all of my charms to have a little bit of space. I like to use elastic as my string for the necklaces. I also like to act like a complete moron outside in my yard so that the neighbors have something fun and exciting to talk about, because I'm a giver. Anyway, thank you guys for letting me share. It's really hot out here. It's so gross. I'm going back inside. Peace.